singers have the look, some have the style, some have the soul. Angela Bofill had it all. Her feeling for music was matched by technique. She was a classically trained singer and a songwriter whose fresh mix of Afro Cuban rhythms broke new musical ground. But as the years passed, she struggled to keep her career afloat. Then, a devastating health crisis turned her world upside down while testing the limits of her personal resolve. Angela Tomasa Bofill was born the oldest of two daughters in Brooklyn, New York on May 2, 1954. She was raised in the projects of West Harlem as well as the Bronx by her Black Puerto Rican mother and white Cuban father. Her father, who once sang with legendary Latin jazz musician Machito, passed on his passion for music to his eldest daughter. When she could barely walk, Angela was already singing at family gatherings, and at 10, she'd written a children's operetta from a story in a Girl Scout book. She told the New York Times in 1982, "There was no family opposition to my becoming a singer, but my mother insisted that if I wanted to sing professionally, I had to go to school and study for it." So she began piano and viola lessons, and in high school, she played in the orchestra and sang in the chorus. Naturally, growing up in the environment that she did, her ear got used to all types of music: R&B, pop, Latin, and jazz. Some of her personal musical influences include Tito Puente and Celia Cruz. When she was about 16, she started writing her own songs. At 17, Angela joined the All-City Chorus, made up of the best voices from New York's high schools. While she was learning the classical repertory, she was also exposed to jazz fusion music. During her last year of high school, she began singing with The Group, a popular salsa band led by Ricardo Marrero that toured local Latin clubs. She attended the Hart College of Music at the University of Hartford for a year before switching to the Manhattan School of Music, where she earned her bachelor degree in voice. After completing her studies, though, she found the real world to be unforgiving. For 2 years, I was with the Dance Theater of Harlem. All the time I was looking for work, but not having a manager, an agent, or a record company, I had to rely on word of mouth. I sang backup on some records, but in 2 years of scuffling, I only made about $3,000. Her professional career finally kicked off after her friend and jazz flutist Dave Valentine, who'd gotten a deal with Dave Grusin and Larry Rosen's label, GRP Records, named her as the perfect choice when the label owners said they were looking for other artists to develop. So she sent in a demo tape. The next thing Angela knew, she had a record deal and began working on her debut album. The project, titled Angie, was released in 1978. The first single, This Time I'll Be Sweeter, would end up being her breakout hit. This time I'll be sweeter. She also received critical and commercial attention for one of several songs she wrote on the album, the sprawling jazz composition, Under the Moon and Over the Sky. Under the moon and over the sky. Less than a year later, her second album, titled Angel of the Night, dropped. It did even better on the charts than her debut. Several singles were released, including the title track that channeled her Latin roots. I have heard there's an angel of the night. As well as a song that she wrote when she was in high school during the breakup with her first love, called I Try. You know that I try to be with you. The latter song caught the attention of a top executive in the music industry, Clive Davis. He ended up signing Angela to his Arista Records label. While her first album on her new label, 1981's Something About You, captured a top 20 placement on the R&B albums chart, it didn't perform as well as her previous releases. Her next effort, though, would give her the mega hit she'd been longing for. The lead single and title track off her 1983 album, Too Tough, would climb all the way to number 5 on the R&B chart and number 2 on the dance chart. To try and keep the momentum going, she released the album Teaser just 9 months later. While it did produce the top 10 R&B hit, I'm On Your Side, the project failed to match the success of Too Tough. At some point during the early 80s, Angela would marry for the first time. Saying it didn't last long would be a gross understatement, as it was over after only 7 days. Fun fact, while other stars in the industry battled with vices like alcohol and drugs, Angela had a different kind of addiction. Juicing. Carrot, beet, spinach, you name it, she drank it and loved it. In 1984, she married for the second time to country music artist Rick Vincent. Not long after, they welcomed a daughter and settled into a comfortable life. 1984's Let Me Be the One and 1985's Tell Me Tomorrow would be the last two albums Angela would put out before leaving Arista in the mid-80s. Fun fact, in addition to getting married and putting out another album in 1984, that was also the year Angela got close and personal with Michael Jackson. That's her presenting the category of Favorite Soul Album at that year's American Music Awards. She was also nominated for an award herself, Best R&B or Soul Female Artist. When Michael won for Thriller and came up on stage, it's clear she had a major starstruck moment when he kissed her. After signing with Capitol Records, her first project for them, 1988's Intuition, would give her another top 10 R&B hit, and her last, with a cover of Gino Vanelli's I Just Wanna Stop. Fun fact, due to the similarities in their look, style, and the music they sang, Angela was often compared or confused for her label mate at Arista, Phyllis Hyman. Angela had a difficult time navigating the latter half of the 80s. Her type of music was getting harder to sell, what with the rise of younger, more photogenic artists marketing themselves through music videos. After the birth of her daughter, the weight Angela had lost at the beginning of her career crept back on and stayed on. She actually never did put out a music video of her own. Fun fact, while Angela was now a well-known singer and songwriter, she was also an accomplished percussionist. As the 90s stepped in, it brought with it some major disappointments. She recorded 2 albums during this time, 1993's I Wanna Love Somebody and 1996's Love in Slow Motion. Neither did well on the charts, and the latter would be her last ever. Also, after 10 years of marriage, Angela and Rick divorced in 1994. Then she started having financial issues. Not only did her last couple of projects not do well, Angela also had to fire her road manager, who she believed was stealing money from her. Even though her popularity began to fade during the late 80s, she still continued to perform well into the 90s and early 2000s. Some of her performances took her abroad, notably to the Philippines in 2004, where, to her surprise, she has a large fan base. Before touching down in Manila, she worried if people would be anticipating her arrival. As she stepped out off the plane, though, hundreds of people were holding her picture and shouting her name. Her time in the Philippines, which happened to be her first trip abroad, was so successful it would result in her first recorded live album. Through the hard times, music remained Angela's refuge, but the everyday struggles to maintain her career did take a toll. On January 10, 2006, Angela suffered a stroke, which paralyzed her on her left side. She explained in her TV1 Unsung episode that as she was in the process of selling her home, she felt a pop inside her brain. Then she started babbling, not being able to form words, and couldn't walk. At the hospital, it was determined that she had a clot in her brain. In later interviews, she also revealed that she did have high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. She convalesced in Santa Rosa, California, and was released from intensive care several days later, requiring speech and physical therapy. Since she didn't have health insurance, a benefit concert was organized to pay her hospital bills. Her album, Live from Manila, recorded 2 years prior, was released during this time to also help cover her medical expenses. Unfortunately, before she was able to fully recover from the first stroke, Angela suffered a second one the following year and went through another round of intense speech and physical therapy that lasted several years. Since then, even though her girly, humorous, and warm self shines through during interviews, the effects of the strokes have broken her syntax. While she is capable of finishing a sentence, you'll notice abrupt pauses that interrupt her speech whenever she's in the middle of driving home a point. She always maintained that someday she wanted to return to the stage with the same voice that melted her fans' hearts away decades ago. But with the help of old friends, admirers, and a loyal fan base, she continued to entertain. In 2010, her manager, Rich Engel, conceived the Angela Bofill Experience, an intimate live set performance led by singers Maisalique, Phil Perry, and Melba Moore, who sing Angela's top hits and signature songs. At the time, the Angela Bofill Experience seemed to serve as the perfect alternative. For every note she could no longer hit, she'd replace them with perfectly delivered jokes and recollections of her glory days, where she entertained her fans as a self-described sit-down comedian, as her friends did the heavy lifting by singing her songs for her. And the audience loved it. In 2023, she was inducted into the Women's Songwriters Hall of Fame. On June 13, 2024, Angela Bofill passed away at her daughter's home in Vallejo, California. She was 70 years old. Crazy enough, in a December 2020 interview with Essence magazine, she touched on the rumors of her death that had circulated online just months before. Laughing at the time, she said she found out about the hoax after she received a lot of calls confirming if it's true. When asked how she felt to see the tributes pouring in, she replied, "You always must welcome love."